If you find yourself lost and you find yourself surrounded by cattails, you're in luck. Cattails are basically the Walmart of the wilderness. They provide food any time of year. You can use them to make shelter. They're medicinal. You can weave baskets with them. You can use them to start a fire. They're kind of like palm trees of the north in that they provide so much from just one plant. Every part of the plant has a million uses. It is the plant supercenter.
My name is Laura Zara.
The most important thing is not dying.
I'm a survival and backcountry specialist.
It is so cozy. It doesn't taste great, but it'll cure all your problems.
I have a hard time explaining what I do and what my life looks like,
but it's way easier to just show you.
In grizzly country, I tend to up the plus on that, learn what it takes to become decivilized.
Cattails are found from Alaska all the way to Florida. There are 3 kinds of main cattails in the US, the broadleaf, the narrowleaf, and a hybrid. So the narrowleaf were brought over from Europe, so they are technically invasive. The broadleaf, which has a wider leaf, is a native plant to the US, but you basically find them everywhere, and they work the same. One of them just happens to have smaller leaves, so if you find them and you can identify it as a cattail, awesome. Make sure that you are properly identifying the plant as cattail. There's a kind of lily that grows in with cattails occasionally. Quite often, they like the same habitat. The difference is the iris has a flat stem and the cattail has a round stem. Make sure that you're identifying the right plant because lilies are toxic. So if you're using these for food, you don't want to get the wrong one. Another good indicator of whether or not you found cattails is if you find these corn dogs on a stick, which is kind of what everyone knows when they think of cattails. Not every single cattail will have one of these, but if a cattail does have this, you know it's a cattail because it's a cattail. Cattails are really important for ecosystems. They not only provide a ton of habitat for wildlife, but they also filter water. Make sure when you're harvesting cattail, if you're planning to eat it, that you don't harvest it from a place where there could be heavy metals, a lot of pollutants, runoff. Cattails by the side of the road might not be best to eat because they're gonna store and accumulate all of those toxins. So make sure you're taking notice of where you're gathering your cattails. So what you're really after is the rhizome. The difference between a root and a rhizome is the roots take up nutrients, water, and anchor it. The rhizomes store food for the plant, and it's how they reproduce. So you're going after rhizomes. The first thing that cattails provide are fire. So the stalks you can use to make a hand drill, which is a form of fire by friction. And when the hot dog part of the cattail goes to seed, all this fluff is really great tinder. It tends to smolder and not really catch on fire super easily, but when you mix it with dried cattail leaves, you can make a great tinder bundle. So now that I have my fire going, I'm going to cook my cattails. So I have the rhizomes, I washed them off in the river, and now I'm going to kind of scrape the outside, get all these little rootlets off and maybe the outer part of the cattail without getting too much off. The outside of the cattail has a lot of, it's really fibrous. So by peeling it, you not only get rid of any extra dirt and you're able to check for rot, but it gets rid of kind of that fibrous coat. It's not toxic, so you don't have to be crazy about removing it, but if you have a lot available to you, which you probably do if you have any, then why not peel it? The inside of the cattail rhizome is a bunch of fiber. In between that fiber, it's all starch. Just crushing this up in water, that starch is gonna separate and settle out on the bottom. You can actually use that as flour. You can take the cut up, peeled pieces of rhizome and stick them in boiling water, 10 minutes or so. That's going to not only kill any potential Giardia that might be in there, any waterborne pathogens, but it's going to make them easier for you to digest and make them taste more delicious. This torch is gonna burn for a really long time, and it's just kind of a slow burn, burning that animal fat, in this case bear fat. It's pretty cool. It's my little primitive candle. The primitive tiki torch that you can make provides ambiance and sets you in a really great mood for your survival situation. Also, if you get voted off the island, you have something to put out. Rhizomes and rhizome shoots, which are the little horn-like things coming off the side of the rhizome, they can be in any time of year, but it's best in the fall and winter. If it's spring and you see pollen on the outside of what's going to become your fluffy hot dog, you can actually put a bag around the top of the cattail and shake it, and you can gather quite a bit of that pollen, and that is also great for flour. You can eat the young leaves in the spring as well, and at the very top of the cattail, above where the hot dog is gonna be, there's this little thing, it's like a little spike, that can be boiled for about 10 minutes and eaten like corn on the cob. It tastes like corn, it's so good. If you have butter and salt in your survival situation, you're gonna be living large. I love butter.
Perfect.
When you want to get to the pharmacy section of your Walmart, you can use a few different parts of the plant. The root, you can grind up and make a poultice. It's good for any wounds, it's good for bruising, inflammation. You just kind of grind it up and throw it on and it magically makes things better. If you burn the leaves of cattail, the ash can be used on wounds. It's also antiseptic and it will help stop bleeding. You can use the fluff from the cattail if you get a wound as a gauze substitute. You might have tiny seeds in your cut, but you know what? It's gonna help staunch that bleeding. If you cut near the base of the cattail, there's this sap that kind of comes out. It's like kind of sticky, almost looks like a gel, and that is antiseptic, so you can put that on any wounds you happen to get. So these leaves can be used for weaving. You can weave hats, you can weave baskets, you can weave anything basically that you would be weaving using a palm tree, you can use cattail for. So you dry them out and then soak them. You can make the weave tighter because they will not shrink a ton. If you use them when they're green, they're gonna shrink up on you and make your weave loose. But now we're just getting into, you know, being a snob about our baskets. So if you're out there and surviving, use what you have to make your emergency cattail hat. Cattails are an incredible shelter plant. So the leaves you can use to make mats, a lot like I did with grass in the tiny homes episode. Right now it's more of a pillow size. I would not need a fire right now. So you can just take a bunch of leaves and use some kind of cordage or string to bind them together. You can actually make cordage out of the leaves of the cattail. It's not super strong, but it'll get the job done if you need a mat. I use kind of a reverse wrap method of twisting each side of the cattail and then twisting it back on itself. It makes it a little bit stronger. So you can make, you know, some little cattail rope. The bottoms of the stalks are kind of hard but spongy, and they make a great insulator. So if you make a mat out of these, not only is it squishy, but it'll keep you warm from the ground. It'll insulate you from the ground. So I really like mats. I'm sitting on one that I made right now, and it's protecting me from rocks and places that I don't want them. So you kind of just string them together, tie each one together. It's super simple. The whole plant with its very long leaves are really great for covering a shelter. If the whole purpose of shelter is to divert water from coming in, if water falls on this, it has a long way to go before it's gonna drip off. So it's really great for shelter material. You can gather a bunch of cattails in a really relatively short period of time and then put them on top of your shelter, kind of layered like shingles, so that they shed water really well. They're also super insulating. So if you find cattails, shelter is like, you're a lot better off than trying to pick up like this leaf. Once again, the fluffy hot dog comes into play. If you need insulation, you can use this fluff. So whether that's just putting a ton of it on the ground to make a pad, or you're actually like harvesting a bunch of it and shoving it in your clothes, or shoving dried leaves in your clothes to add insulation. During World War II, the hot dog fluff was actually used to stuff plane seats. It was used to make life preservers. They stuffed tank seats with it. They stuffed toys with it. So this fluff has done a lot for us. So if you burn away this fluff, you're left with just the seeds. But that seems like an incredibly time-consuming method to get a much smaller amount of food. So it's there, have fun with it, but there's easier ways to get your food from your cattails. If you take these pieces of rhizome, you can grind them up when they're wet with a little water, and this paste that's coming out of it, when that dries, it leaves flour behind. You can also take pieces of the rhizome and dry them either in the sun or using a really low heat source, and you can pound up that dried rhizome and get the flour from that. So with the flour, you can either like make it into little cakes and try to cook them by the fire. You can add it to like a soup or a stew. It's really like a potato substitute. It's super starchy, but it's actually really filling. The stem of the hot dog makes great chopsticks. When you eat the root of the cattail, there's a ton of these fibers in there, and even though they've kind of softened a little bit from cooking, I think the best way to eat it is kind of like an artichoke, where you're like biting it and like stripping the starch away from the fibers. But it's like one of the most incredibly tasting foods even without salt. It really just tastes like a potato. It's not even a good survival food. It's actually just pretty good. So finding starch in a survival situation is really hard. And the fact that this grows everywhere, it's just so good. So if you're planning on going out and getting lost, try to do it in the wetlands so you can have a red-winged blackbird as your greeter, and you will always have low, low prices at the Cattail Supercenter. The Cattail also provides a useful paper towel, although I just don't care enough